The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the guests appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 8 News Now or Nexstar Media Group.
Well, this week, one of the big headlines in the national scene, Paul Manafort and Mr. Cohen, both on the same day. It was a plea deal and then also a jury in the case of Paul Manafort. But some dominoes perhaps falling. What does this mean for President Trump as you see two of his associates through the campaign getting their legal stuff adjudicated, I guess, or going through the process and getting a decision on the same day? Well,
I'm not surprised. I mean, we've been talking about this for a very long time on this show, in politics. And so I'm not surprised that any of this has happened. I mean, we've been talking about how, the folks around Trump, the folks that Trump surrounds himself with, have significant legal problems. And it wouldn't surprise me if things start to fall and start to implicate the president as well. And so I'm not surprised by any of this. I think you start to see more dominoes continue to fall. I think you see people around him, around the president, continue to start to talk and start to say things. I mean, you have Omarosa talking now with her tapes and her books and all of this stuff. And look, at the end of the day, you are judged also by the people who you surround yourself with. And if you surround yourself with people like Michael Cohen who are willing to rat you out, I'm sorry, I judge that as a leadership flaw, as a character flaw for the president. And I think all of this, everything that happened this Tuesday, speaks volumes for this presidency.
As part of that plea, Michael Cohen did implicate the president, at least in the context of directing him to make the payments. But what does this mean for the president?
Well, first of all, Omarosa is the most discredited person that has ever lived, just about. She's irrelevant. She's lied through her teeth in that book, and people who she has quoted as saying things have already come out, several people, and said that that didn't happen. It's an absolute lie. So she's just trying to make things up as it goes along. So she's irrelevant. The fact is that there's been an effort from the day that Trump announced his candidacy to the time that he got the nomination, to the time that he won, to the time that he actually wound up taking office in his inauguration. The left has consistently wanted to be able to go after him and find a reason to get him out of office. They hate his guts. They can't stand what he's doing. They don't like his pomposity. They don't like his attitude and his personality, as well as what he's trying to accomplish. So, I mean, I understand that. In terms of the situations that have happened this past week, Manafort convicted of eight counts, I believe. 10 were a hung jury. None of these, zero, had to do with Trump whatsoever. It had nothing to do with him. So that's irrelevant. Number two, you've got Michael Cohen, an admitted liar, making statements about the president. Now, two things. One, every attorney that I've heard speaking on national television and every other area have all said that there's nothing here that implicates Trump at all. Just because he said it means nothing. So he said means nothing, number one. Number two, there was no law broken. There was no law broken, and everybody says that. It's too bad there wasn't. Gee whiz, we'd like to go after him. They've looked for collusion. They've looked for everything from the beginning. Nothing has shown that the president has ever broken a law. Even the fact if he out of his own pocket paid off these two gals, not against the law either. So no law has been broken. The fact that Michael Cohen took a plea and said what he said, they found things out when they raided his office and his house that that implicated him in other areas. It's too bad that they did raid his house and raid his office. I think that was probably somewhat bordered on illegal, but they did it. They got information. They got him, and he has now pleaded guilty. He may wind up going to prison, maybe not. We'll wind up seeing. But again, none of this has to do with Trump whatsoever. Irrelevant, the fact that he made a claim. His claim does not mean that Trump broke the law. That's the important thing.
What does it say to you, Annette, that somebody that was close, in this case Trump's personal attorney, flipped on him?
Well, and broke the law. He broke the law. And at the end of the day, I go back to, this isn't nothing. These people are surrounding the president. These are his core team. And I'm sorry, if I hired somebody and they were on my team and they broke the law, I would be done with them, because I have no time in my life to surround myself with people like that. Again, it's a reflection on my leadership and who I am as a human being. And so for me, this is a direct reflection of the president. It's a direct reflection of the Republican Party, because the Republican Party refuses to call Trump out on the people around him, on the things that are happening within this investigation. And frankly, the hypocrisy is astounding to me, because if this were Barack Obama or anybody else, they would be outraged. But because this is their beloved President Trump, who can do no wrong, even though he's doing a lot wrong, they can't call him out. They can't say that he has broken laws or that he's surrounding himself with people who have broken laws, and I find that to be wrong. Well,
actually, the interesting thing about that is that, you know, it was Obama that had to pay $400,000 in campaign violations from 2008, and you didn't see that anywhere in the news. By the way, Biden today still owes $200,000 to the FEC for campaign violations, and he hasn't paid it yet, and that's still against him. So we could talk about that, but the issue is, and again, I understand, bringing us back to Trump, the GOP, the 2018 election, November 6th, and all that stuff. I get it. I get what the left wants to do is they want to be able to take over the House of Representatives in November, or by the end of the year from this election. I'm not sure that's going to happen, by the way. But they're using everything they can. They've done this from the very, very, very beginning. They can't stand the fact that Trump is president.
So Mueller's a part of the left now. Mueller is the left. Is that what you're saying?
Mueller is definitely there colluding to go against the president.
Oh my gosh.
He's doing everything. Wait. Hey, this.
Get a grip, man.
No. You get a grip, because I'll tell you right now, this so-called investigation, this witch hunt, was supposed to have ended by the end of last December. It was supposed to have ended last December. That was the date they picked. We're out here 8 months later, or whatever it is, about 8 months later or so, and it's still going on. They're looking. They can't stand it that they've looked for something. They've never been able to find anything at all against Donald Trump. So they wind up with Manafort. Manafort is not Trump. Mueller is not. Cohen is not Trump. They cannot find anything against Trump. That bothers them so much. So we're going to get anybody else we can around them.
Alan.
Good luck. Keep searching.
Okay.
Keep looking.
You said yourself that you wanted this investigation. You wanted them to look into this.
The investigation was supposed to be completed last year. How much longer is it going to go on? Until we find something, of course. I understand. I get it.
Okay.
Yeah, until we find something. Till hell freezes over, we're going to let this go on.
Okay.
No, it's okay.
In the vein of that, as this comes out, it emerges that the president will be coming out here in perhaps the next couple of weeks, President Trump to be campaigning for Dean Heller, Danny Tarkanian, the rest of the GOP field, presumably here. Does this have any impact on that as the president campaigns with Republicans?
Absolutely. I don't know why Dean Heller would want Donald Trump out here campaigning for him. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to me. They should be running from Donald Trump at this point, but they're not. And the fact of the matter is, Dean Heller is complicit in all of this. He has not said a word, not one word. And I'm sorry, they're giant hypocrites. They, again, would have gone after a Democrat with no problem whatsoever. But Dean Heller has been completely silent on this, and now he wants to campaign with Donald Trump. You know, 2 years ago, he basically was bought and paid for by Donald Trump because he did exactly what he wanted him to do on the health care bill. So of course he's going to be Donald Trump's little lapdog and do whatever Donald Trump wants him to do, and then Donald Trump's going to come here and campaign for him. None of this surprises me, but at the end of the day, I think voters are smarter than that, and I think voters will see through that for both Tarkanian and for Heller and any other Republican candidates who align themselves with Trump's lack of values. So I see Dean Heller as part of the problem.
I have a hard time seeing that the president coming out would convince, or that Democrats would be voting for Senator Heller or for Danny Tarkanian or most of the Republican candidates just because of the differences on the issues. So does it, in the context of that, does it even matter?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because most of the candidates that the president has campaigned for, not all, but most that he has campaigned for across the country have won. Number one. Number two, I think what he wants to do is, and what he has done in other parts of the country, excite his base. In other words, make sure the Republicans do get out and vote. A lot of people were not happy with Heller, as we've talked about that before. Well, I don't know if I'm going to vote for Heller. I remember last election along, people said I'd vote for Trump, but I wouldn't vote for Heck. Remember that happened? And I get it. I think what he wants to do is excite the base, make sure the base turns out, and I don't think he expects to influence you or Democrats or libs that are, you know, you're going to vote for Heller or any of the other Republicans. But he's not looking for that. He's looking to excite the base, get them motivated, and make sure they're out. And then there'll be other efforts made to be able to sway independents. Maybe he'll sway some independents. Maybe other efforts will be made to sway them independent of Donald Trump. But again, so I think that him coming out here, he's the President of the United States, and I think that this is going to have an impact for his base.
Last week on Alan's radio show, we had, or you had Adam Laxalt come on for a campaign interview, and one of the questions you posed to him had to do with question one, enforceability, and all of that. And he said that it, quote, played a small role in the overall piece of how this has played out. This week, Clark County judge said that he agreed in general that there was an issue with the law, it wasn't enforceable. Is this vindication for Adam Laxalt?
Absolutely not. Adam Laxalt didn't want question one to pass from the very beginning. He was one of their head campaign people out there on TV talking about how question one was so wrong. He never had any thought in his head that he was going to implement question one. He was going to find any excuse whatsoever so that he didn't have to enforce it, and he did. And at the end of the day, he can poo-poo the fact that he played a small role. I listened to that interview. He didn't play a small role. It's his fault we're not implementing it. And then he wouldn't even take questions from callers on Alan's show. He took one call. And so for me, he won't answer questions about any of these issues, including question one, and he never wanted question one to be there in the first place. So this isn't vindication for him. This is more evidence that as school shootings are happening and shootings are happening in our communities and gun violence is happening every single day in our community, Adam Laxalt continues to do absolutely nothing about it and will continue to do absolutely nothing about it as our Attorney General. And as governor, I think he would do the exact same thing. Absolutely nothing. What
do you think, Alan? Do you think that he gets some sort of vindication out of this insofar as the ruling was similar to his reasonings for his opinion?
You know, it's been said, by the way, of Trump a long time ago that if he walked on water, people would say he couldn't swim. The fact that Adam Laxalt has followed the letter of the law means nothing to liberals, because what they say is, you know what, we don't care about the letter of the law. We want to know how we can implement something, whether it's legal or not. He said from the beginning it was not legal. He said that during the campaign, and it was not legal because the FBI would not implement their part of this. Now, that's in there. The judge said in the ruling you're talking about that he and the governor, by the way, both did not try hard enough. They, in fact, tried very hard to make sure that this was implemented. That's what the lawsuit against them was about. They weren't trying very hard. And I've had people on my show, Democrats, people who are elected Democrats, say, well, he could have done more. And I say to these people, who are lawyers, by the way, I say, what could he have done? Oh, I don't know that much about it. I don't know what he could have done. Well, wait a minute. You're criticizing him. What more could he have done? Here's the letter of the law. He followed the letter of the law. Now, if you don't like it, change it. Now, they can't change it for 3 years until after it's been voted on, which means by the end of 2019, they can be turned around and changed at that point if they want to do it, if that does happen. And we may wind up with a Democrat legislature up north, and we'll see how that plays out. But in terms of what Adam did, I defend him 1,000% on this, because the FBI says they will not implement it. It specifies in that question it's got to be the FBI, and there's no other way you can do it unless you want to break the law. And again, libs say, let's break the law in order to be able to do things we want to do. And I'm saying, you know what, let's follow the letter of the law. And in this case, that's where we come down on the opposition.
I would imagine this would be a top priority if the Democrats hold the legislature to pass something, but there is the possibility that Adam Laxalt could be the governor, at which point he could veto or potentially would, or absolutely will. If you're a Democrat, you're going to say he's absolutely going to veto it. But if this comes down to a political showdown, then what? Well,
ideally, Adam Laxalt does not become governor. That's the first point. But God forbid he does become governor, then he would be tested on this, because he loves to say he's played a very small role in this and that he didn't have a lot to do with it and it wasn't written correctly. Okay, so let's bring a bill back. Let's really test if it was written correctly or if you just didn't want to implement it. And then we'll see. But again, I hope we don't get that far. I hope that someone like Steve Sisolak is there, because I believe he will actually do something when it comes to gun violence, and he will be willing to talk to folks in the legislature about how to get that done. And so that excites me.
I'm glad that you agree to the fact that, you know, they could look at this if Laxalt is governor and to see what he does. If Sisolak is elected governor and the legislature meets in the spring of next year, they can do absolutely nothing about this question.
But they can do stuff about other things with gun violence.
No,
absolutely.
Yes, but they cannot touch this question until the end of 19. So, I mean, that's where we stand with this. Again, you know, this was a poorly written piece of initiative. It was poorly written. They did not do the research ahead of time, and all the mumbo jumbo about coming down on Laxalt and even Sandoval. I mean, you know, about they didn't do enough. They did plenty. He went to the FBI. He talked to them. And again, for those people, for any of those people out there, anybody that says they should have done more, my question is, as I've asked these lawyers before from the Democrat side, what could they have done as long as it was written like this? And they said, well, I really don't know. I don't know that much about it. Nobody knows. You know why? Nothing could have been done.
Would you have a response to that? I don't know if you would have an answer.
Other states actually have implemented exact legislation just like this, because their attorney generals were willing to implement the legislation and move forward. And Adam Laxalt got the response from the FBI that he wanted. It wasn't a matter of, oh, well, I played a very small role. No, that's such BS, and we both know it. If other states could implement this, so could we. And that is really the problem.
No other states have implemented it with the FBI checking, number one. That is not true. Not one state, number one. Number two, you are presupposing, and it's a hallucination, that Adam Laxalt is able to manipulate the FBI and say to them, I'm asking you to do it, but wink, wink, you don't really want to implement it, do you? Okay, right. Adam Laxalt has that kind of moxie when the FBI. Wonderful. I mean, this is nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts that we're not implementing it.
No, it's not. No, you can't. Yeah. That's right. You want to implement something that's illegal.
Okay.
Again, libs. Okay. It doesn't matter if it's against the law. This is what I want. It's in my heart.
Okay.
Okay. Wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, you guys
we've already seen.
You guys don't follow the law anyways. I mean, Donald Trump doesn't even follow the law, so that's fine. Okay. You're an arbiter of laws.
Can't argue about this. We're bringing Donald Trump now. Okay.
I'm just saying.
No.
Hypocrisy
I get it.
At its finest.
There's no way in the world that you or any lib is going to ever justify the idea that this should have been implemented the way it was written. The way it was written. Now, you may want to change things if you have the opportunity, the end of 19. We'll see what happens with the election this year. You may have that opportunity. But you have to admit that this law was poorly written and it was unenforceable.
I think we're going to leave it there for this week. We are running out of time, actually quickly clicking down, but thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.